Welcome to a lot of more ASMR. Today, I will be stealing the grain from the Ukrainians. Okay, I have stolen the grain. I will now simulate the Ukrainians starving to death.
Oh, блядь! My grain! Stalin took the grain! Oh, блядь! I am dying! I need food!
I fuck the music! I make it curl! I fuck the music with my serpent curl! Hit, hit, hit! Wanna be, have no fear, comes and goes, man, it's here, no one knows, feels so weird when it blows through my bones, I got a dose for it. Wanna know more, cause it's about what I got to show.
Witam towarzyszy, to jest Polinkarz, and welcome to Big Brain University with Finbol, and unfortunately Renegade couldn't make it, but we have Jacobin, aka Raven, aka Zach.
I thought you were going to say, unfortunately, Zach.
Unfortunately, Zach couldn't make it.
All right, yeah. So we're the first video we're watching is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Sounds a lot like Karl Marx.
I like how it's so shittily cut from the look at how the edges around Stalin's
some
face.
MS Paint tool.
Yeah.
Shit.
Some neocon spent like 20 seconds in fucking paint.net.
My boomer eyes can't see pixels this small.
I think that the effort to divide race and class has always been the tool of the powerful to prevent everyday working people from taking control of the government that is supposed to work for them.
So Hitler's there?
Hitler.
A lot of the roots of the issues that we
Oh,
have
go
right
back.
now.
I don't know.
Okay, stop.
The thing is, like, when I saw that at first, I thought they were like...
Wait, go back to the picture.
I can't tell if what they're trying to say is that...
Bottom left or top left.
Yeah, I can't tell if Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or what the video was trying to say is that AOC is saying the same things as these people, or if what she said was being done by all these people. It could be interpreted either way. It doesn't really. It's not very clear.
So what PragerU is saying that if you say that the government should be run by the people, then you're an evil
Hitler.
communist.
You
Yeah.
are literally Hitler. If you think that the government should serve the working class, the contributors to production, the real fucking working people, then
Think again, buddy.
You're literally fucking Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini.
Yeah, well, I mean, PragerU has a video on D-Day. They're like, yeah, D-Day was awesome. Fucking killed those Nazi runners.
the
yeah,
fucking,
the war against the socialists. Wonderful.
Oh, I'm just gonna point out that for the last 6 months, Rabbit has had that text. We are having intermittent issues that make Rabbit a little less great. We're sorry. We're working to get it fixed, and it's there literally every single time you use Rabbit.
Yeah, well, they've been having intermittent issues for.
This is not an intermittent issue at this point.
Well, stop
This is an
complaining,
ongoing.
man. In Soviet Union, we only had fucking Vimeo.
This is
Yeah, Blip TV and Ustream.
a deliberate downgrade. It's not a intermittent fucking issue.
When a website has planned fucking obsolescence.
Well, they don't fix it. They're just if we just let them know that we know it sucks, then it's okay.
You see a lot of the roots of the issues that we have right now.
Now they're just literally attacking her character, not even having any real argument. It's just oh, look at AOC doing these funny hand movements. Well, what a fucking idiot.
Yeah, but everyone does that when they talk, especially when they're talking in front of a bunch of people. Obviously, you're going to use hand motions.
If you think AOC's fucking hand motions are crazy, fucking look at the fucking Zizek Peterson debate. With Zizek literally waving his hands around.
What about Trump just making the OK sign with both his mouth and his hands?
Okay. Are we anti-fucking Trump we're just like a liberal cuck podcast now. We're just like Trump is shitty.
Trump is poopy.
Why is Trump why is his mouth so small? Like, why?
I don't know.
Yeah.
80s.
Ah.
I think a perfect example of how
Okay.
special interests and the powerful have pitted white working class Americans against brown and black working class Americans.
Are you fucking serious?
In order to just screw over all working class Americans.
What?
What?
What even
So,
was
like-
that mathematical interpretation? Like, what?
So, so she's saying that they are turning white people against non-white people, so therefore she's racist.
I mean, the thing is, the problem is that this is so unclear.
But it's a thing for people with like legitimately low intelligence, though. I mean, I see a lot of people like share shit like that all the time, and it's just nonsensical. Like it doesn't make any sense on like any sort of like level, but they share it anyway because they think it makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
it's just like, oh wow,
like,
this is very short and very interesting. Like, okay,
And just like they're not making any argument. They're just saying like if you are Marx, then you're bad. Like they
Yeah.
just take it as self-evident that Marxism is bad. So if you just get called a Marxist, then you're automatically bad. No argument required.
I mean, you can think that you can reasonably think that some of Marx's shit is wrong. Like, maybe not reasonably, but at least like moderately believe that. But these fucking reactionaries have gone so far that they just completely dismiss all of the sociological and economic contributions that Marx has made that like are universally recognized by the fucking by like the academic community as at least somewhat beneficial.
But
Yeah,
holy gosh,
it's
don't you
funny.
see all the academics are all Marxist secretly?
Oh yeah, my bad. Yeah, the entire academia is crypto Marxist.
Well, wait, hold on. The Smithsonian says that Karl Marx is the world's most influential philosopher.
Yeah.
So-
No, yeah, they literally there was an article that came out recently that literally named Karl Marx the most influential philosopher of the 20th century. Like to just
I think just of all time is what it was. I think.
and the majority of like for example, like when I went on the personality test website, like they allowed you to like compare your personalities to famous historical people. They don't even even they show Marx in a good light. Like obviously they were like, because basically they distinguished historical people, like if the person's like card was white, then they were like good, but if their card was black, then they were like bad. And so like obviously Stalin, Mao, Lenin, Che Guevara, and Fidel Castro, obviously they all were like black cards, but Marx was actually one of the white cards. So it's like it's at this point it's just so like irrational to just straight up call Marx evil. Like it's just so fucking ridiculous.
Well,
Yeah.
if you had to choose the most influential philosophical thinker, like at least of the recent century, like or like who else could it possibly be? Like Marxism like spread to half the globe, so okay, you could say that socialism and capitalism are like of equal historical significance in that sense if they both control half the globe. But there isn't like a clear example of there isn't as clear of an example of like, okay, this is the thinker who founded capitalism or something. Like, okay, there's Adam Smith, there's various like Enlightenment era philosophers, but
Yeah,
with
like John
with
Locke.
socialism,
Like yeah, capitalism is like from at least the way that we understand it, it comes out of like a many Enlightenment era liberal philosophers like John Locke and well, I mean Smith wasn't really a philosopher, he was an economist.
but like
Enlightenment era academics essentially, like there's a group of them. But then when we talk about socialism, it's all just it was just Marx. It was just.
I mean,
Marx.
yeah, Like, there's been plenty of like non-Marxist socialists, but their significance is like basically non-existent.
Yeah, but I mean,
know?
even besides that, though, like Lenin, Dietzgen, Engels, all these other famous
But if they were
intellectuals.
Marxists, no.
Yeah, but the thing is that Adam Smith clearly borrowed things from Locke, like clearly, right?
Well, sure.
Like the liberal philosophers or the academics of the Enlightenment era all shared ideas. Like they all borrowed from each other, just like how all of the socialist academics borrowed from each other.
Sure, but there's a pretty clear like continuity between like Marx, Lenin, Mao.
I suppose, but I mean, still, like we have to recognize that Engels is very closely as important as Marx was in the development of socialist theory, and obviously Dietzgen is not as well known, but his influence is like actually like super underappreciated, because Dietzgen came to dialectical and historical materialism by himself. Like he didn't have to go through Marxism to figure that shit out. And so Marx and Engels both commended Dietzgen for like figuring that out himself.
We're getting like way off
Yeah.
topic, but
is Reaganism in the 80s.
A few isolated groups in the backwater of American life still hold perverted notions of what America is all about. Recently, in some places in the nation, there's been a disturbing reoccurrence of bigotry and violence. If I may, from the platform of this organization, known for its tolerance, I would like to address a few remarks to those groups who still adhere to senseless racism and religious prejudice. To
okay,
those
stop.
individuals who persist in such hate.
Fuck.
First of all,
So like,
you can't
so
say...
like all these,
Sorry,
so
go
all
ahead.
these non-white, so all these non-white people are racist. It's their fault.
Yeah, like, I mean,
Racism doesn't exist. If you think racism exists, then you're racist.
once again, this feels so unclear. I don't know if Reagan
Wait.
was talking about like that black people were like or not black people, but like
They had to take Reagan out of context. Like,
Well,
it's
I don't
really
know.
Reagan, and they're taking him out of context.
well, yeah,
Well,
but I'm saying like you can't really tell if he's talking about fringe groups, like radical fringe groups that are causing the racism, or if he's talking about like rednecks. Like you can't really tell. Like
I think, well, he's at the NAACP. I think he's talking about like rednecks and like, well, not rednecks specifically, but just like white supremacists.
yeah,
It doesn't even matter. Like, even if Reagan says like, okay, I don't support racism, like, what does that matter? Like,
yeah.
as
I mean,
if-
he clearly fucking was racist.
Like, he's at the NAACP. He's gonna say like, yeah, I support racism. Like, he's at the NAACP.
and even if like Reagan didn't personally support it, what does that matter? Like, racism is still real. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's like, but essentially, like, what they're trying to criticize here is like AOC calling Reagan like a racist. But like, even if he wasn't like consciously racist, you can't fucking like deny the fact that that Reaganism in America was very detrimental to black people. Like, sure, you can like, of course, neocons will fucking deny it, but like, I feel like you have to be just totally fucking disconnected from reality if you want to say that the Reagan era was in any way significantly beneficial to fucking black people or minorities.
and just for the sake of like being fair and balanced and whatnot, like, I'm gonna point out that Obama was also terrible and Bush was also terrible, and they were all terrible for black people. But like,
Yeah. Clinton was terrible for black people too, dude. Like he pretty much like I forgot what it was exactly, but he
was
like
a Democrat who was tough on crime. Let's say
he did something like he was doing shit that was like really fucking up like education for black people, and then Hillary Clinton literally like implicitly called black kids predators.
Oh yeah,
Super
I remember that.
Yeah, super predators. Yeah, it was so fucking bad. Like, I was like, holy shit, this is so fucking like implicitly racist.
the problem with like both sides in this video is that like PragerU doesn't make an argument. They just say like Cortez is similar to Marx, therefore she's wrong, and Cortez makes the exact same kind of non-argument. She's like, oh well, Reagan is bad because he's Reagan.
It's
Like,
a formula for anti-communist propaganda. They do it every video.
Well, yeah, but it's also a formula for liberals. They just like liberals don't make arguments either. They just like say, "Oh, white supremacy is bad. Reagan is Reagan, so therefore he's bad." Like they don't explain why it's bad. Like, of course it's bad, but you can't just take that as a given. Like they're not gonna. The other side is not gonna be convinced by that if you just like make this moral, like do this moral grandstanding. Like, oh well, you're a racist. Like, well. They're like, yeah, we are, but so like that's good. Like they think it's good. It's like when they call us like, oh you fucking communists, like are like yeah, like
Yeah.
You know
like,
what, man? I mean, Milo Yiannopoulos is being deplatformed because he's a gay Republican. That's why they're trying to deplatform Milo Yiannopoulos, not because he's a fucking supporter of pedophilia.
Like, fucking, yeah, it's just ridiculous. I was gonna say something, but like the worst shit is that like, I mean, I don't know if this is still the case because recently there has been sort of like an awakening on how like shitty Reagan was, but like not too long ago, people still considered Reagan to be the best president in U.S. history, and it's just so.
Well, that's just the narrative.
It's just so ridiculous that like, well, they did like a poll, and then like they saw like which people like said the best presidents in American history were, and like most people said Reagan, followed by like Lincoln, and like those people. But the thing is that like Reagan was just so objectively detrimental to American society and economy, especially fucking economy. Like Reaganomics fucking like led to like literally all of the economic problems that we're in today. But Reaganomics is really just like the beginning of neoliberalism. Like essentially that's what it was. And so
well, that's exactly what it is.
Yeah. And so
our wages have been stagnant for like 30 fucking years now.
Well, not even. It's been stagnant for even longer than that. But Reagan definitely did not help at all. He only made the situation worse.
Well, the thing is that when capitalism reaches a certain point, like it's not that Reagan just implemented a policy and that ruined everything. It's just that capitalism reached a certain point, and that's when they had to implement neoliberal policies to ensure that the profits keep coming. And it's not that Reagan just implemented a bad policy. It's just that like Reaganomics just reflects the like natural state that capitalism is developing in.
Exactly. Make no mistake that we're not saying that if the right people are in government, the system can be good, because obviously that's not the case.
Like if they didn't implement Reaganomics, then capitalism would have collapsed. Like they had to do it.
Yeah, and I mean, and if it wasn't Reagan, it would have just been some other fucking like capitalist like president. Like
like it's no coincidence that everybody started doing neoliberalism around the same time. It's just because capitalism was developing like that.
It's the falling rate of profit.
It's no problem. Like, it's not a problem with the individuals. It's just the system in its entirety. It's like, that's the problem with social democrats, because they believe that, if you just put the right people in government, it'll all be good. But no, that's just not the case.
Well, that's what the Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie people think. Like.
Well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, of course.
They don't want to get. They always talk about getting money out of politics, and like, if you just put a politician in who is not corrupt, and who is not bribed by super PACs or whatever, then it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think Bernie himself is good for American politics, though. Not like just the idea of like participating.
Well, Bernie and AOC are good. Bernie and AOC are good for.
I mean, like they're pushing people towards the left so that we can radicalize them later on. Like that's
Bernie. Well,
I hope.
Bernie and AOC like.
Yeah, but they do become radicalized though. Like a lot of people talk shit about the DSA, but the DSA has some like really radical people in it, and a lot of people don't. No, I mean it has a lot of insufferable liberals too, but it also is literally creating like actual radical communists and shit.
I think,
So-
I think the better thing about Bernie, like it's not so much that Bernie is like actually good and therefore he radicalizes people. It's just that Bernie is actually so crap that people who want something good, they go to Bernie and then they're disappointed and see like Bernie doesn't actually stand for anything or do anything.
Right. That's what I'm trying to say.
Well-
is Bernie and AOC are good only because they are like a starting point.
Let me make a point here after you're done.
Like when we look at the first wave of socialist revolutions, we saw very similar things happening, like with Kautsky, right?
Yeah, and that's
where
what Lenin
social
was saying,
democrats, where social democrats were kind of like, stealing the scene for a while. But then the workers were like, they're like, wait a second, this is not enough. Like, we need more than this. And so then they went to people like Lenin and like more radical Marxists, because the SOCDEMs were essentially like, SOCDEMs like Kautsky were essentially just taking like Marx and then manipulating him in a way where it's like, oh, well, we just need to put the right people in government and we can solve all these problems that Marx points out. But like, then you have like the radicals who actually understood Marx on a like a legitimate level, like Lenin, who are like, no, that's not Marxism. It's like Marx specifically said how like these problems will be fixed and like how this will happen. And the way that the SOCDEMs like Kautsky are pointing out, it's wrong. It's not correct, and it's not going to get anywhere. And so we're essentially seeing the exact same shit happen right now. The working class is getting fed up again. The social democrats are laying the base, laying the framework, and then eventually the workers will be like, this is not enough, and we have to look to more radical methods.
Yeah, but social democrats won't even win, though. That's the thing. That's the reason why they're implementing austerity in like Finland.
Well, I mean, the social democrats around Lenin's time didn't really win either.
Yeah, but I mean, that's why they're implementing austerity, though. They blocked Bernie from winning the election. Like, capitalism can't even handle social democracy now. Like,
Well,
you know what I mean? We were just talking about Reaganomics. I mean, they can't handle social democracy.
Yeah, no, I mean, because they don't have, like, the reason why social democracy was actually to some extent implemented in the West around the World War II and post-World War II era before Reagan was because they managed to make so much money from the war that they were able to sustain such a social democratic system for a couple decades.
And even more, like, because I mean, think about the level of like increase in productivity. Like if you imagine like Finland was still pretty non-industrialized in like the 1950s. Like they started building industry in the 1950s and 1960s at a crazy rate, and the same same with most of Europe. Like productivity was still increasing so much that it was possible to make high profits. But eventually, when Europe was all like really industrialized, then you're making huge amounts of products, and the market is just like absolutely saturated. People don't have the money to buy them. Like, you can't keep the wages increasing at the same rate as the productivity is increasing. Like, so wages start to lag behind, and the whole thing starts stagnating.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But yeah, so let's continue.
So then, yeah.
Hateful behavior. If I were speaking to them instead of to you, I would say to them, you are the ones who are out of step with our society.
Wait, Das Kapital
You
for
are the
dummies?
ones who willfully violate the meaning of the dream that is America. And this country, because it
let's put the German title of the book with English subtitle.
Das Kapital for dummies.
Das Kapital for dummies. Like,
at least
why
they're
not just capital?
recognizing-
Well, yeah. I mean, your average fucking dumbass reactionary won't know that capital is the English word for Das Kapital. Like,
Maybe
too
they'll
fucking
get them to
stupid.
actually read Capital. You know what
This
I
is
mean?
just
Because
like-
it has to be for dummies, because it's actually an intellectual book and not for fucking morons.
What Reagan is saying right now is just empty fucking words. He's like, oh, well, America is for everybody, guys. Well, like, I mean, yeah, literally every politician says that they like everybody and they support everybody, like with the exception of the working class politicians who say that they only stand for the workers. But like every capitalist always says like, oh yeah, I'm a man of the people.
Yeah, they
Like,
all try to
that doesn't
appeal-
mean anything.
Like it's
Yeah.
honestly, this is just like so stupid because like
Reagan
they're-
said he likes the normal people, therefore he must actually do that.
Yeah, this is just such a linear and like just like empty argument. It's just like, well, let's just show Reagan talking about how he likes black people. That'll be enough. It's like no, like maybe actually like pull up some like fucking legitimate sources, like statistics, like some shit that shows that he was like good for the black
They
community.
own
but,
the libs.
but they don't
But
have
like even
any
the
fucking
alt-right,
statistics.
like even the alt-right is not gonna be like, yeah, we hate black people, man. Like nobody says that.
Well,
Like,
I mean, I don't know. I mean, there are actually some.
Yeah, I mean, there's some
none of
people, but
the-
even most fascists say like, oh yeah, we're fine with like people should just like stick to their own kind, but we're still like,
that's
I
true.
love
Like,
my people.
A lot of modern fascists will say, well, it's not a problem about race, it's just a problem of nationality. And it's like, oh, okay.
they say like, oh, we're equal but we're different or something. Even Nazis these days don't say like, oh, we just want to exterminate all the non-white people.
Yeah, but there definitely are like, and it's not like it's anything like huge, but there definitely are like very open, like openly racist members of the alt-right movement.
Well, sure, but I'm just saying that like
None of
there
them
are some
like,
there's
really as big though. Like that's like I get what you're trying to say. Like
no,
it's not.
I'm
as,
saying that there's people who are really, really, really racist, and even they don't say that they're racist yet. So
Yeah, well, yeah, because
it doesn't really mean much.
it's empty. It's all empty. Like of course you're not gonna just flat like of course if you're a sensical person you're not just gonna flat out say I actually hate black people. It's like okay, thanks Reagan.
What it stands for will not stand for your conduct.
All right, well,
Okay.
we shared our thoughts, so
Will not stand for your conduct. Well, you know what?
Well,
I don't like racism. I don't appreciate that you're being a racist.
was it where is it? The left ruins everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
Why do they ruin everything?
Left
Everything.
ruins everything.
God damn it! I was trying to pay my worker fucking $1 an hour, and the left tried to ruin it.
Why can't I?
The
No.
left ruins Harvard, huh?
How do I? Oh yeah. 'cause
Why
I
the
have
why
that,
the
okay.
U.S. has no high-speed rail? Xi Jinping last week tonight with John Oliver. Did you know Mike Gravel is like a dengist? Because he's like.
If what I'm
talking
about to tell
fucking
you is
Belt and Road shit.
Oh no, it's actually fucking Dennis
It's
Prager,
actually the Prague himself.
the Prague, the Great Prague.
Great Prague. All right, here we go. Let's get into this fucking shit show. Hold on, wait. Is Freddy fucking available yet? I'm gonna give him a quick call. It's been an hour.
Yeah, what's up?
Hey, are you coming?
Oh man, I'm still drinking. Fuck, it's just really complicated right now. You should give me some time beforehand, bro. Like, it's really hard. I got this Moroccan dude who's like talking me up. He's fucking me up, not to the girl. He's also talking me up to this like Russian girl who just her husband died. It's like it's mad crazy in New York. You know, all you guys, you, Zach, Finny. I'm gonna call him Finny just for short because I don't know his name. But you guys all should come to New York. Don't worry about it. I got you. It's the fucking center of everything.
You're so fucking
I
drunk.
just got out of work. I didn't even plan anything I'm getting into. But I would still love to talk to you guys. Because I want to argue with every single one of you because you're all wrong. And I'm fucking right. Okay?
How many drinks have you had? How many fucking drinks have you had?
Not too many. Not too many. It's just.
Yeah, clearly.
Well, I've had enough to be a dick. Stages. I've hit the first stage. I'm at dick level. I'm just being a dick to you bitches right now because you're just listening to me talk to you. So fuck you all. I don't give a shit if I sound mad to you whenever it's puberty coming, because I'm gonna come at you hard. Don't worry about it. This old ass fucking brain and these old ass muscles as a construction workers will rip every one of you niggas apart. Just period. Don't even come at me, bro. No. Give me my time in another hour. I'll tell you. If you guys are still out, I'll still fuck with you guys.
Okay, dude, we're shredding these fucking PragerU videos without you, man.
Bro, oh man, I don't even listen to PragerU. I'm not listening to one PragerU video. It's already like, alright, these guys are retards. Like, it's obvious, you know? You just gotta read the material. But, you know, it's so stupid that I might get stunned. And it might be funny. So, alright, let's, hit me up in an hour.
Alright, I will if we're still doing it. Alright, see ya.
That was Dennis.
If what I am about to tell you is true, almost everything we most treasure, freedom, beauty, reason, the family, economic well-being, and even goodness, is in jeopardy. Who or what poses this threat? The answer is the most powerful ideology of the last 100 years, leftism. Not liberalism, leftism.
Oh, he's really on this shit.
Once again,
progressivism.
dude, I think Prager's been reading up some fucking Marx, man. He actually knows the difference between left and liberal now.
Yeah,
oh wait, no,
crazy.
my bad. He's just referring it to as progressivism. Never mind.
Leftism destroys everything it touches. Here are just a few examples. 1. The universities. Perhaps the most
I thought
obvious
he was going to say the universe.
many liberals acknowledge is the left's near destruction of most universities as places of learning.
Well,
In the words of
Aristotle
Harvard
and all those
professor
other
Steven
fucking
Pinker,
jackasses are actually jackasses.
So like I walked up to my college with a sledgehammer, and then I just demolished the whole fucking building.
We break every statue of Aristotle and Plato and George Washington.
And they're like, "What are you doing, man?" I'm like, "Well, this is leftism, dude. We're running this now."
Activism. Dude, Steven Pinker's a fucking idiot. Like, he's legitimately stupid. I watched a Joe Rogan interview of him, and it was just the worst shit. It was so bad. The dude was just like, the dude is so clearly fucking empty-minded. It's fucking ridiculous.
an atheist and a liberal. Because of the left, quote, universities are becoming laughingstocks of intolerance, unquote. At almost every university, and now high schools and even elementary schools, students are taught to shut down, not debate, those who differ with them, and to rely on feelings rather than reason.
Are they taught that though? I
the
don't see how
arts.
they're taught that. I mean,
Throughout history,
I remember when I was in the high school class, just the one class. They told me, remember, always rely on your feelings and always just shut down people, never debate anyone. I remember when that. It's not as if we were always doing Socratic seminars or anything. We were just.
Yeah, I was about to say Socratic seminar. Like, what the fuck?
I mean, okay, so I'm gonna say, like, liberals and conservatives both have these, like, tendencies where they just take certain things as self-evident axiomatic truths, and they're like, okay, well, if you're a racist, then you're wrong, so we just call you racist, we don't make an argument, like, that's enough. Like, okay, liberals do that, so they kind of do rely on feelings in that sense, that they don't make an argument.
Well, absolutely. Most of liberalism is like idealist truisms.
Yeah, like, but it's exactly the same for PragerU. They're like, oh, well, family, my family, my Christianity. Like, you're not making an argument. You're just appealing, like, oh, well, you have positive feelings associated with the word family, surely. Like, yeah, okay, you may. This is not a word association test. Like, these are not arguments.
the primary purpose of art was to elevate people through beauty, artistic excellence, and emotional depth. To the left, the primary purpose of art, sculpture, and music is to shock. That's why so much contemporary art is meaningless and involves the scatological, meaning urine and feces. Yes, urine and feces, to give one of countless examples in 2016.
Yeah. Like, he is not making an argument. He's just saying, like...
Urine and feces.
He's like, oh, the left wants to make poo-poo art, and we want to make beautiful art. Well, like, that, what?
The left just wants poo-poo art.
He's just saying, like, okay, abstract art is stupid because, I don't know, old people think it's stupid.
It's
and
just
then,
poo-poo
like...
pee-pee, that's why. That's all it is.
These young people and their shocking shock things. Like, okay, who cares? Like, that's... I don't know, like, PragerU never makes an argument. Like, all they do is just appeal to
truisms.
Whatever truisms they have, like, yeah, the family and whatever traditional values. Like, all it is just identity politics. It's just like traditional values, and that's that.
For real.
Democracy, freedom, like words with no defined meaning.
Progressive competition. Yeah, no.
Yeah, like no, they have something like liberty. What does liberty mean? Like liberty to starve as a homeless person in the U.S. Like apparently, like, or something like freedom of enterprise. Like it has the word freedom. Like okay, people like freedom, I guess.
I love the concept of the extended freedoms. Instead of the 5 freedoms, you have the 10 freedoms. So on top of like the 5 freedoms, you know, speech, press, all the other ones I can't fucking come up to like my mind right now, but
assembly and probably.
But they freedom of assembly and etc. And then But then they added another 5. I think it was like some leftist organization, but they added like an extra 5, like freedom from starvation, freedom from homelessness, freedom from disease.
Yeah,
like the 10. We should have the 10 freedoms, not just the 5 freedoms. Like that's what liberty should be.
It's just a matter of like defining what it means, because like freedom, like free enterprise, or whatever, it involves the freedom of the capitalist to exploit his workers. So it really just comes down to like, I don't know, like PragerU obviously doesn't go this deep into it, but they just take like the capitalist perspective of what freedom is as like a self-evident thing. So they're like, okay, if the capitalist has the right to own property, then it's freedom. Well, but obviously like that involves everybody else being denied access to that property, access to the means of production and the resources they need.
There's a guy at my work who got fucking fired for asking for a raise after 5 years, and there were new hires who were making more money than he was, and he was there for 5 years, and he fucking fired him for fucking asking for a raise in front of everyone.
He has the freedom to be fired because of an arbitrary reason, and they have the freedom to do it.
So, I found this. I think this is like some animal rights activist group, but it says that the 5 freedoms are freedom from hunger and thirst by ready access to fresh water and diet to maintain health and vigor, freedom from discomfort by providing an appropriate environment including shelter and a comfortable resting area, freedom from pain, injury, or disease, freedom to express normal behavior, and freedom from fear and distress.
No, but that's a good example.
Those are all applicable to humanity too, like, you know.
Yeah,
that's what socialism is essentially. Is just guaranteeing those fundamental biological rights that humans should have. These 5 freedoms that I just read off are literally the reason why like organized society exists. Humans were tired of suffering from the inefficient hunter-gatherer system. And so, you know, we created the government so that people can, you know, not suffer from these natural, like, you know, problems like hunger and thirst, discomfort, pain, behavior, fear and distress. Like, the government is meant to protect all of humanity from those, problems. They're supposed to guarantee those freedoms, but, due to the idealist nature of class differences and the material conditions that led to class divisions and etc., these freedoms just became obscured. Like, they're not even recognized as fundamental freedoms that a society should provide. They're more of just like, oh well, if you do good you can have these things. Like, it's like the whole system is now not doing what it was originally meant to do, right? But that's pretty much all of history at this point.
Well, not to say everyone should just sit around and not work. I mean, like, that's absolutely
no. Yeah, of course. Of course, everybody should have the right to work as well. Like, obviously.
But it needs to be emphasized because there are a lot of like leftists out there who just talk about fully automated fucking gay space communism all day. And,
well,
they want like champagne like yacht fucking communism.
Honestly, I've never met an actual communist who said that. Like, I've seen some like
they're
liberals.
not an actual communist, I don't think.
I mean, of course, but like I've seen some liberals in like demonstrations who say like, oh yeah, we're just gonna get like UBI and then robots are gonna do all the work. But I've never seen an actual socialist who believes
that happen.
Yeah,
no.
I mean, like, that's the thing though, is that the right to work is freedom of normal behavior. It is normal behavior for a human to be productive, to do something, to constantly be working. Like, obviously not to such like
not to excess.
Yeah, not to an excessive extent, but it's stupid to think that people just don't want to work, because it's not, psychologically speaking, it's not normal behavior for humans to just sit around and be lazy asses. Like, that's not normal human behavior. Normal human behavior does inherently involve work and productivity.
I mean, yeah, that's like why people who don't have anything to do, like who don't have a job or whatever, like that's why they turn to alcoholism or something, because it's just like they need some kind of
exactly like if people who don't work, like they either fall to some like drug addiction or something like of that nature, because constantly not doing anything is honestly like the ultimate suffering of just not being able to do anything. Like,
yeah, that's
there is worth suffering than that.
That's
like,
what prison is you don't get to do anything.
But literally just sitting around all day is so detrimental to the human psyche that humans rather be intoxicated than exist in such a way,
Yeah, like I'm gonna use an example that's like, this is obviously a fictional character, but like Sherlock Holmes, whenever he doesn't have a case, he does cocaine because he needs some other kind of like mental stimulation. So he does coke when he doesn't have a job.
Right.
Yeah.
Or you're like Freud and you just do coke anyway.
I think people want to be quote unquote lazy under capitalism is because they're so overworked that they just want as much free time as they can possibly have because they spend.
And also they're being alienated from their work. Like, alienation is a major factor of why many people are. Alienation is a major factor how to modern sort of what we can call laziness, but it's not really laziness. And also apathy and apolitical like behavior. Like, alienation from one's workplace is one of the most detrimental aspects to a human psyche. Like, that's why people come home from work and all they do is just sit and watch TV until they pass out. Like,
I mean, it's also because they think that their work is stupid and pointless and meaningless, and they hate it, and they only do it because of the money, and they feel like there's something else that they're passionate about that they want to do. Like, so they want to get home from work so that they can do the things that actually inspire them. But they're
overworked and overtired, and so they just don't really have them. And on top of that, like, when people having that hole of purpose in your psyche, in your psychology, feeling as if your what you contribute to society is really not all that like purposeful, then it makes people incredibly unmotivated. And so when they, besides the fact that they're overworked and usually overtired when they come home, on a psychological level, not just a physical level, they're exhausted by the fact that they feel like their life has no purpose, and so they don't have the motivation to actually get into some some passion that they have, or do something on the side. Like, sure, there are examples of people doing that out there, but it's very, very few, and usually those people are like self-employed. Like
what I like when I'm working in the factory, like I usually think like, okay, I have this thing I gotta do when I get home. I have this thing I gotta do, or I have this thing. Like when I'm at work, I'm thinking like, okay, when I get home, I really want to get to work on this thing, and then like when I actually get get home from work, I'm too tired, so I just like sit there and I go to sleep or something. So I try to like wake up early, so I'm like I have energy to do stuff before I go to work. Like that's usually what I do, and then when I come home from work, I just go to bed or something.
I mean, honestly, this is like the reason why I'm like I would like call myself to some extent like a Freudian Marxist, because when you really look at you know at the various classes in the capitalist system, you can see how massive of a contributive factor alienation is. Like how much human alienation in the system actually, you know, cycles back into the system's failure, right? Because like it's not just the working class people that are alienated too. It's the bourgeois class as well, because they're suffering from you know, the superficial sort of conditions of their class, and of course they like members of the bourgeoisie like sort of suffer from what one could call like a power addiction. And so
yeah, definitely.
And so like what these like, you know, bourgeois parents, they'll be like so focused on you know, like getting higher up on the bourgeois chain that they neglect their kids. And so we constantly see rich kids with like serious fucking problems. Like they're always like, rich kids are like famous, or not famous, but like, you know, colloquially well known to be like commonly drug addicts and etc. And like be, you know, resistant to their parents and etc. And that's because their bourgeois parents are just so focused on being bourgeois that they don't even give their kids enough like time of the day. And so it's this horrible cycle of all of the classes alienating themselves and each other.
Yeah, like there was I think it was a Finnish like investor who I'm pretty sure he like jumped in front of a train like because like one of his investments failed and he lost a lot of money, and it was like basically because he like lost face because it was a bad investment. And it's just like absolute pathological behavior. Like,
yeah, it's terrible, truly.
The Guggenheim Museum in New York featured a pure gold working toilet, which visitors were invited to use. The name
all right,
of the
stop.
exhibit...
So they've been trying to build one of these Guggenheim, however you pronounce that, like museums in Finland for forever, and like they've been trying to build one, and they've tried to like, I don't know, like this is not some like left-wing project. Like it's a private corporation that owns the trademark of the museum, and like they've been trying, like the way they try to market it is like, okay, we agree to allow to have one in Finland if like the Finnish state like pays for the construction and upkeep of the thing, and then the fucking corporation takes a cut from the profits. This is not a left. This is not exactly a left-wing idea. It's a private corporation.
Yeah, and clearly, like the art that
It's a
they
private.
display is
It's
not...
a private art. It's a private art museum. It's like they basically just have an art museum, and they have the name like trademarked.
Yeah, and the art that they display is not displayed for some ideological reason, like the company is leftist somehow. No, it's just like it's like essentially an attempt to be like cutting edge, right? It's like,
Yeah,
oh
and
well, the Guggenheim Museum has all these like these like new like innovative forms of art. It's like kind of like it's like liberal intellectual like idealist shit, right?
It's not socialist realism.
Yeah, exactly.
Surprise, surprise.
and so yeah, like this museum appeals to like those intellectual like artistic liberals, you know, like that's what these displays are put up for. Like, it's not because the company that owns the museum is crypto leftist and they're just trying to take a shit on all the good art. It's like, no, that's not their fucking purpose.
Extreme
Was
levels
America.
of dumb.
So one could literally relieve oneself on America. 3. Literature. The English department at the University of Pennsylvania replaced the portrait of the greatest English language writer.
You know what this is? Like, you know how like there's SJW outrage when they're like, they say like, you know, outrage culture when like SJWs complain about random things. This is like the exact same thing. Like, conservatives always have like right-wing outrage, like, oh, the outrage of the liberals just pooping on America.
How dare they make a toilet and name it America? What the
Someone has the freedom to take a shit on America.
The liberals destroying the family. I am outraged.
Just want to take a shit on America. That's just what they want to do. It's an outrage. And it's like it's essentially the exact same shit like
War on Christmas, Black Santa Claus. I'm outraged.
There's not enough women representation in video games. There's not enough fat black women in Overwatch.
I mean, and then the gamers say the exact same thing. They say like, "Oh, I'm so outraged that they called Mario sexist. How dare you criticize Mario?" Like, I've played like every Super Mario game out there, and I don't care like if somebody calls Mario sex. It doesn't deeply offend me.
Yeah, like obviously there are just like some very silly like, you know, like sexist undertones in the Mario games, but who fucking cares? Like, that's not a fucking primary issue. That's not a primary contradiction of capitalism that Mario.
Yeah, I don't think women, like, I wish that was like the worst that women have to deal with, but you know, I think
yeah, exactly. Like, there are like far worse issues to be fucking outraged about right now that are much worse than Mario being sexist on a very silly and like unintentionally like way. Like, yeah, no, it's just silly. It's it's a waste of time. It's a serious waste of time.
Who ever lived, William Shakespeare, with a picture of a black lesbian poet.
How dare they? I'm outraged.
How dare they take down fucking Shakespeare and put a black lesbian? How dare they? It's like, oh yeah, it's not as if like Shakespeare is literally known by fucking everyone. Like, maybe we should give like some more light on other people, like, you know, to sort of expand the sphere of intellectual knowledge. But no, dude, we just need to dedicate everything to Shakespeare and George Washington and fucking Aristotle and just...
Yeah, but Reagan loves black people though.
I mean, there's something like, whenever I talk to Americans, they're always like, oh yeah, we were forced to read Shakespeare and we hate it. But I actually like Shakespeare, and I was never forced to read Shakespeare.
I like Shakespeare.
So it's like,
I like Shakespeare too. I like Shakespeare a lot, actually. But I mean,
like, whatever they're doing is clearly not working, because like all the Americans I talk to say they hate it.
Yeah, you need to read Shakespeare in English class in high school. You need to.
I hate to.
I'm pretty sure we weren't forced to.
The reason why I like Shakespeare so much is because I'm just a huge fan of drama, like you know, entertainment. Like, I love the fucking Godfather movies. They're like fucking incredible. So I'm just a big fan of drama. So obviously somebody like me would like thoroughly enjoy Shakespeare because he's like the fucking the founding fathers of modern drama.
I just like flowery prose. It's like Shakespeare and H.P. Lovecraft, that kind of stuff. Like,
yeah,
it's a lot of times it's more like style over plot, but
Yeah, Shakespeare. Yeah, also like his style is definitely very like sort of artsy, and like I kind of enjoy that shit. But like,
it's because back then they didn't have any like, I mean, there was no copyright either, so people would just like do whatever they wanted. But there was also like the language was not as like codified yet, so that's why it's so weird. And
I mean, that's the
he
reason
would just
why.
he would just invent words.
That's the reason why a lot of people prefer Engels over Marx, because Engels writes in this very like direct and minimalist way, and he doesn't like use like poetic flowery languages or words, I mean. But
he doesn't call capitalists vampires.
yeah, but like I definitely prefer Marx over Engels for that very reason. I just love the poetic like writing style of Marx, and just the way that he writes is just so fucking entertaining to read. Like, yeah, Engels is easier to read, but he's much less entertaining than Marx is in my experience.
The same thing with Stalin. Stalin is like dry, but he's like
compared to
very
Lenin. Yeah, exactly. Like Stalin is a very like dry, very straightforward minimalist writer, but then Lenin was like this really fucking like, he's a lot like Marx in the fact that he's like poetic and etc. Not as much as Marx, but he's definitely more than like Stalin and
Lenin is really ironic. Like, he has so much irony in like, and
sarcasm.
he has a very like sarcastic style usually.
Yeah, a lot like Marx.
Yeah.
Yeah.
White European male. Leftist professors have replaced the pursuit of excellence with the pursuit of diversity. 4. Late-night television. In America, late-night television shows were completely apolitical. The hosts believed their role was to entertain viewers.
Bullshit. That's just not true. The Saturday Night Live was always political, and so like that's just so fucking ridiculous. Like, Jesus Christ.
And offer them relief and laughter after a difficult day. No longer, you cannot watch late-night television if you just want to be entertained.
Now it's about
late-night TV is now left-night TV. 5.
Okay, stop. Like,
the left has...
I mean, but like, what is the point if the degree of political discourse is like, well, do you like capitalism that's like, and capitalism that's socially conservative, or would you like capitalism that's a little bit more socially liberal? Like, it's meaningless. It's like, do we bomb this country and say it's because, like, I don't know, we gotta steal their oil, or do we bomb them because we claim that it's a humanitarian mission and we actually love them all? Like, what does it matter? Like, it's all.
Yeah, Trump wants to invade Iran because he loves Iranians.
Yes.
Like, I mean, yeah, like Trump says that he like, oh, we should put America first and steal their stuff. Like, okay, whatever. But Hillary says like, oh, well, we're doing it for humanitarian reasons.
Yeah, we destroyed Libya because Gaddafi was a terrorist.
Like, yeah, it just...
Definitely not because Libya has one of the like largest fucking oil supplies in the world or anything. Interesting like how America consistently only like attacks countries that are rich in oil. Like, interesting.
It's like, yeah, okay, there like some social issues are meaningful in people's lives, but a lot of this is just like stupid distraction. Like,
yeah,
and that's what like that's why both parties are focusing on these social issues. Like, that's why conservatives, they talk about abortion and they talk about gay marriage and stuff like that, because like,
can you believe that these fucking Republicans are talking about the Second Amendment? I can't fucking believe this is such an outrage.
Like what if they wouldn't talk about gay marriage and stuff, or trans people, then what else are they going to talk about? The parties agree about everything else. They're like, yeah, of course the billionaires should have all the money, and of course the poor are going to be like out there on the streets like starving and dying of fucking preventable disease. Like,
yeah, the only like somewhat real like issue that they actually disagree on, but don't actually disagree on, but like pretend to, is healthcare, which I guess is like relevant, like, more relevant than all these other issues, but Well, Democrats and Republicans. But I mean, the thing is that
do most Democrats actually want single payer?
not most, but like half the Democrats, like, well, not half, but like the progressive bloc of the Democrats, like actually do promote like some level of single payer healthcare. But like, but the thing is that like fucking... Obamacare was literally Mitt Romney's healthcare plan. Like Obamacare was literally the same shit that Mitt Romney was proposing. Like,
I mean, it's just mandatory private health insurance. But okay, so even if, let's say that a minority of the Democrats, let's say that all the Democrats want single payer healthcare, like, then you just have like neoliberal capitalism versus social democrat capitalism. Like, it's still just like it's still like, okay, fascist capitalism or parliamentary capitalism or social democrat capitalism. Like, it's just various, like,
ultimately it's the exact, like, takes. Ultimately it's the same as like the point. It's like these
you have a different aesthetic on the same economic system, like different strategies. Like, okay, do we try to bribe the people, do we try to fool the people, do we try to repress and scare the people, like, to achieve the same, to protect capitalism? It's just different strategies.
Yeah, like social democracy is essentially like a populist bribery capitalism, and then like neoliberalism, concession. And then neoliberalism is like let's trick the people capitalism, and then like fascism is like, oh well,
let's just openly terrorize
them. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, pick one. Fucking concession capitalism, trickery capitalism, or fucking terrorist capitalism.
That's pretty good.
Has ruined much of mainstream Protestantism and Catholicism and non-Orthodox Judaism, which are now little more than left-wing organizations with religious symbols. In many churches and synagogues, one is more likely to hear the clergy
talk. Welcome to the Church of the Democrats.
I mean, what do you want? Fucking Wahhabism? Like...
About political issues than about any other subject, including even
greed, that thing that...
Yeah, remember all those churches that just threw away the Bible in favor of gun policy and healthcare? Remember when that happened?
Even in this country, like, even in, like, there's, like, a ultra leftist, like, social democrat Finland, like...
ultra leftist.
Like, yeah, like, even here, like... I think there's, like, one... there's like couple fringe like Lutheran priests who are like are marrying gays and stuff like that, but like even here the church is like the church is really hesitant to like acknowledge gay marriage and like but they have like the same, they're willing to give them the same legal rights, but they're not willing to give them the same like recognition according to their religion. And like they're just playing this opportunistic game where they really don't want to go along with the progressive times, but they also know that if they don't make any concessions, that people are just gonna like further like leave the church, because like the church is having a really hard time getting new members. Like the only way they get new members is just by converting everybody or like baptizing everybody at birth.
Yeah,
and then trying to prevent them from leaving,
or going to like poor ass countries and like building like sending like these missionaries to build schools, and then they convert like all the local people to like Christianity in the process. Like that.
Yeah, but here we actually have a state religion, so like most people are just baptized by default, and then you have to take the conscious like effort to leave, which is precisely the opposite of how it should be.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, exactly. Like people, the thing is that people just don't like care enough, so they're just like, oh, whatever. Like, I was baptized at birth. It's kind of like circumcision.
Yeah, like I mean,
Fallen Kosh, were you baptized?
Yeah, I was.
I wasn't baptized.
I was because I'm Polish, so like literally if you are not a baptized Polish person, you are literally Satan.
So you were baptized, Fimbo?
Yeah, and like
I'm
in
the
school,
Satanist here, I guess.
and like in schools, they still like they sing like religious songs like during springtime and Christmas and everything. They have religious songs because those are like associated with Finnish culture. They like try to brand it as like a Finnish cultural or semi like nationalistic
Oh, what the fuck?
type of thing. So like, because people don't believe in God, but they still like belong to the church because they think like, oh well, you know, it's just the thing you do, and like,
It's just part of the culture, like whatever.
yeah, and that's like what the church tries to cling to. But even in this like supposed left wing hellhole that Finland is, like this socialist communist dictatorship, like, even here, like the church is not like the church is very conservative. They are as conservative as they can get away with without like losing all their members. Like when there was a big like debate about gay marriage, and when the church was like forced to give their actual opinions, everybody was like shocked like how reactionary they were. But so they just try to like hide it, but they still are like, it's not like the church is like, oh yeah, like we only allow gays to join the church now, and like fuck the Bible.
If there was anything virtually every American considered a bedrock value, it was freedom of speech. Yet the left is destroying even this unique American achievement. Almost half of America's
America
young people
uniquely achieved freedom of speech, definitely. Absolutely.
say they believe in free speech, but not for hate speech. Yet the whole point of free speech is that it allows people to express any political or social position, including what any one of us considers hate speech. And hate speech now means any position the left differs with. 7, race.
Okay,
America
stop.
has become the least...
So, I mean, this is just like too stupid to even talk about. So, like, okay, if not only do the corporations own all the media anyway, and then like, do they, like, the CIA infiltrates and fucking colludes with all the media, and like all the communists and socialists and leftists are purged out of there, and
actually, very interestingly, it's really crazy actually how deep it goes, because a lot of people are just so unaware of the amount of influence that the government has in media. And a little while ago, we're kind of getting in like semi conspiracy theorist territory, but like there was this journalist, and he was doing this was during shortly before the Trump. I'm not sure actually. It might have been during the Clinton presidency. But there was this journalist who basically exposed the Clintons for all this crazy like shit that they were doing, like drug trafficking and fucking in Arkansas, and there's a cohesive list of people that were like very probably killed by the Clintons. And I've actually gone through it, and it all seems pretty fucking legit. It's crazy. Like literally half of these people were in some way associated with the Clintons or like the Clinton opposition, and they were like journalists or like big people, and like a shit ton of them died by suicide or plane crash. And it's just fucking crazy. It's like it's like Godfather level like politics, like mafia fucking government shit. It's so crazy. and then there was like but even less like conspiratorial. There was this German journalist who came out quite recently, like 5 years ago, and he essentially
about the NATO thing.
He blew the whole lid. He was like, literally the CIA came to me. He's like, literally the CIA came to me and told me to say this, and they tried to bribe me. And he's like, I'm coming out now, and I'm fearing for my life, but I want to expose the shit that's happening behind the scenes. And like, I think they actually found him dead or something. But the other journalist that I was talking about, who was like reporting on the Clintons, he made this Facebook post saying he's like I'm pretty sure that the Clinton administration is after me. And if I end up dead in the next couple days, just know that it's not what they're telling you, and that I was in fact killed by the Clintons. And literally like 6 hours later, he was found dead. It's
like,
crazy.
Just look at the previous shit they've done. Like, just because they never admit what they're doing now, but they can admit to stuff that happened a long time ago. So if you look at like COINTELPRO, like on the FBI's website about COINTELPRO, it says that like the first group that was targeted by COINTELPRO was the Communist Party, and they just openly admit it. Like, oh yeah, it was originally started to attack the Communist Party, later to attack the Socialist Party and Black Panther Party and whatnot. But so like if they deliberately like purge all the communists out of Hollywood, and all the people who are like what they called Stalinist fellow travelers. So that means like not a communist, but somebody who is not anti-communist enough. They purge them out of the media and out of Hollywood and out of journalism.
The
they fucking infiltrate all the parties. And like, by the way, fucking being a communist is not supposed to be a crime. So
yeah, I mean, like, just watch the movie Trumbo. That shit's fucking like actually really like.
So they do all that, and then they're like, oh well, but we are okay. So you don't technically outlaw being a communist, but you still like secretly and covertly fucking attack them. And look at fucking WikiLeaks. Like, and like all these people who fucking leak shit, like they leak government wrongdoings.
And then they're called out as criminals and like traitors and shit, like fucking Snowden and what's his name? What's his name?
I mean, Assange,
yeah,
and fucking
and the female
Manning.
Manning, yeah.
Like they. Yeah, like I strongly doubt that PragerU is like out there campaigning for Assange and
it's like I'm not seeing PragerU defending Assange's fucking illegal arrest and like incarceration for simply exposing NATO governments for fucking like atrocities.
I don't see PragerU out there saying like, oh well, the Black Panther Party didn't actually like, just because they were communists and just because like they wanted black people to have equal rights, we shouldn't have targeted them. Like, no, like PragerU calls those people terrorists who deserved it, and like
exactly.
Yeah.
And like and another thing that I remembered, just an example of one of the stories of like one of the deaths. So the story goes, now, you know, obviously take this all with a grain of salt because this is like semi-conspiracy theorist, like, you know, territory. But
you're gonna edit this like when you're sober and you're gonna be like, what the fuck?
Well, I mean, no, it's nothing like fantastic.
I know, I'm kidding.
But yeah, but it's like it is very fucking weird. So basically, you know, the whole
no, the American government wouldn't do anything wrong, like.
So the whole Arkansas drug trafficking thing, like, you know, there was like that whole controversy about the Clintons' involvement in cocaine sale in Arkansas, and so there were these two teenagers found dead on a railroad, and the story goes is that they had accidentally stumbled upon like an FBI like crack trade with like drug dealers. And
what the fuck?
They discovered the teenagers. They shot them both in the back with shotguns and then threw them on train tracks, and they were ran over by a train. And even though the autopsy found them shot in the back with shotgun rounds, they declared it suicide.
Nice.
I mean, but like, look at, you know, the deaths of the Black Panther leaders, like the like nobody
the death
was.
Of, MLK is questionable because apparently.
I mean, it's questionable for sure, but with the Black Panther leaders, it's like totally obvious that the story that's given is entirely bullshit. Like they
right.
Yeah.
Like they tried to prove that, like, just everything about it. They tried to prove that the Black Panthers, like, that they opened fire first, and they couldn't, like, the ballistic evidence didn't find any bullet holes shot by any of them except one person. And and like, who was the guy who was shot in his sleep? Was it like Fred Hampton? Yeah, like, and like I believe wasn't he like, I think he was even alive after like getting all the bullets, and then they shot him in the head like later, like execution style, like.
Yeah. What's it called?
That was like the city. Wasn't that like the? That was the FBI and just like the city police like doing it.
I mean, we already know like for a fact that the FBI tried to blackmail MLK into committing suicide.
Oh yeah, like it's all, but they can talk about it now because it was like, oh yeah, that was a long time ago. Like, don't worry, guys, we don't do that anymore.
Yeah, and like, but I mean, even the assassination itself is questionable because I've read a story about how apparently MLK even after he was shot, he was actually going to live because they managed to get him to the hospital quick enough, and then apparently like FBI agents showed up and told all the nurses to leave the room, and then they like held a pillow over his face until he died.
Well, it's like Angela Davis when she was like, I believe, shot during the like, I mean, she was in like a gunfight between the Panthers and the police, where of course like the police say that the Panthers opened fire first, which makes no sense, but the police basically were trying to kill them, and she was in the hospital getting treated, and the police are like, of course, watching her, and like every time the nurses would leave the room, the police would like beat her and like torture her, and like. Yeah. And eventually she said to the nurses like, yeah, don't leave, like just stay here constantly, because every time you go away the police are like beating me, and like, and God damn, I mean,
yeah, it's a fucked up situation to be in.
Racist, multiracial society in world history.
Oh my God.
On a daily basis, Americans of every race and ethnicity get along superbly. But the left constantly poisons young minds with angry diatribes about systemic racism, microaggressions, and white privilege.
Okay, stop.
8, the Boy Scouts.
The Boy Scouts. They let girls into the Boy Scouts. What the fuck?
All these fucking hot these hot button issues like Boy Scouts and like okay, yeah, so racism is just imaginary. It doesn't exist. It's just like if the it's all the black people's
belong
fault.
To the poorest class. Like the majority of black people in America are part of the poor class because it's just their fault. Like it's not as if there's some correlation between, you know, black people being generally disadvantaged in society leading to the majority of them being in poor fucking living conditions with only a minority of them actually ascending into other classes. It's not as if like, there's some reason for that besides that just black people are fucking evil or lazy or fucking gangs or whatever.
Like, yeah, they're gonna have to either say that black people are just somehow inferior because they end up in these poorer conditions, or that the poorer conditions are somehow externally imposed. And we happen to think that they are externally imposed. But like, if PragerU doesn't think that, then they're gonna have to argue that black people are just somehow worse people because they end up being poor and like being put in jail and whatnot.
Have you guys? So recently, I watched the Godfather movie, all the Godfather movies with my girlfriend, and I've watched them once before. But that was a long fucking time ago. Now, have you guys recently watched the Godfather movies?
1 and 2. Like, did you? I noticed like when I watched them recently, I noticed like all the communist references, like the
and the movie is very like
all the Italian like Communist Party posters, like
and the thing is like the movie,
obviously the Cuba thing.
Yeah, of course. Now the movie is actually like when you watch The Godfather as a Marxist, it's so fucking enlightening because when you watch it and actually analyze the undertones and the themes of the film is super progressive. like super socially progressive. Like they literally point out how these mafias that were inherently involved with the government were like openly fucking racist and openly trying to sell drugs to black communities only, and they literally just like showcased how these very racist people were heavily involved in the government, and the government itself, like much of the government was corrupted and openly racist itself. Like in the fucking in Godfather 2, like I think it was like the mayor of like New York or something, like straight up just like said that he fucking hates Italians and he's like racist against Italians, and like and it's not as if these things are just fantastical. Like it's not as if the movie the writer of the books, the Godfather books, was just taking this out of his ass. Like no, this was just a fucking reality among the bourgeois, the members of the bourgeois class, and how deeply involved the mafia was. And I think Godfather 3 actually shows it even more than any of the previous movies, just how deep the involvement was of the crime scene in not only the government but even the fucking Vatican. Like it's fucking incredible. It's just awesome.
It's so funny when they're like in Cuba and they're thinking like, should we invest like in the Cuban like brothels and drug trafficking and whatnot, and then they're like asking like, isn't there some kind of rebellion going on or something? And they're like, no, it's not a big deal. And then like literally the next day or something, the revolutionaries take over.
Yeah, and also like there was of course that whole like the scene where the five families were meeting, and the guys like we all do well for ourselves, and like we're not communists. Like they literally said that. Like
yeah, we're not gonna share gonna share our territories, like our markets, because we're not communists.
Yeah, we're all like, and they were like fully just like aware of the class dynamic and how they're oppressing fucking poor people, and they're like, we're not communists, like, you know, this is what we do.
Well, that's like the entrepreneurial like petty bourgeois spirit, is like, oh yeah, like I am rich, but it's supposedly because I clawed myself to the top, like I managed to like fuck everybody else over, so I deserve my privilege.
Either.
So yeah, I would definitely recommend all Marxists to go watch the Godfather movies again if you haven't in a while, because truly they're just so fucking. I mean, besides the fact that they're just great movies, like they're legitimately fucking classics.
This is like really off topic, but like if you want to watch like a really good movie about alienation, like watch fucking Fight Club.
Oh yeah.
I watched that recently again.
Yeah, but definitely check out the fucking Godfather movies. They're just so fucking like the undertones and themes are just so like ironically progressive, in a very special way. Like literally the great thing about those movies is that no one is really a protagonist. Like the movie openly displays how shitty all the people are, and like how fucking evil they all are. They like how all the terrible shit they do. And it's, I mean, but also it's not as if they just show them like, oh, they just do this because they're evil. Like no, they show the legitimate conditions that these people live in that make them do these things. Like it's not as if all the characters are like just plainly evil. Like they all have reasons for the bad shit they do, but you know, they're not protagonists. Like no one is really a protagonist.
Well, it's like in Fight Club, like the protagonist is not really, he's an anti-hero, but it's like, I don't know, like these are probably not meant to be like intentionally like it's not intentional, but just like if you watch them with a Marxist analysis, then it's, you know, kind of illustrative of the capitalist system.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and yeah, like it's honestly fucking crazy. Like the more of these classic movies that I watch, the more that I see like how these like legitimately intelligent writers and directors had like these very leftist tendencies. So yeah. But anyway, let's now watch them complain about how the Boy Scouts invited girls in.
Watch Charlie Chaplin. I mean, that's
the Charlie Chaplin. Well, you know, Charlie Chaplin of course was an anarchist, but like nonetheless, he still like, you know, contributed some pretty great leftist like rhetoric to the public.
Yeah.
the left is destroying the Boy Scouts. They're not even the Boy Scouts anymore. They're just the Scouts. The left forced them to
what
admit
a travesty.
girls. Here's the thing.
Okay.
Stop.
What a fucking travesty. They invited the girls. This is a boys-only club.
Like, why is it necessary for it to be Boy Scouts? Like when here, of course, of course here it was like basically split into two competing organizations. There was the Scouts. Like here it was just called the Scouts, which was the right-wing one, and then there was the Pioneers, which was like for the working class people.
Yeah,
but like
Young Pioneers are fucking awesome, dude. Especially the East German Young Pioneers. They let you drive a mini version of the fucking the KV-1.
What?
Yeah, you haven't seen that?
No.
Dude, I'm finding that right now. We'll continue, Finball.
So like here in this country, it was never like segregated like that. It wasn't segregated based on gender or sex. It was just based on class. So there was the Scouts.
Sorry, they're T-34s, not KV-1s. My bad.
So there was just the Scouts, and there was the Pioneer organizations, and I mean, what does it matter? Like the Pioneers had boys and girls, and the Scouts. I mean, the Scouts coincidentally here happen to have boys and girls too. But like, why is it so essential that it's boys only?
Dude, this shit is so fucking cool. I wish I was an East German Young Pioneer. You
Because
get to fucking drive mini fucking T-34s, dude. Like, just look, like that shit looks so. Just look in the Discord, man. Like, would you not want to drive that?
Tanky orgasm.
Yeah, like literally, like fuck, man. I want to jack off in a mini fucking T-34, dude. That'd be like a spiritual experience for me.
It's just generally a good idea to have like some kind of organization that gives the youth something to do, so that they don't become like these social outcasts. I mean, because the thing is, like back in the day when PragerU always talks about the left taking over. Like, the left is not taking over. Like, okay, liberals, like liberal capitalism is taking over. Okay, like you fucking fossils are dying out, and like But the new capitalist who is emerging is like the Zuckerbergs and the whatever. Like, okay, yeah, they push like liberal values instead of conservative values, but it's still the same old capitalist shit. And like same whatever. Like but back in the day when the left was actually stronger, we had things like working class sports like organizations there, and like to pursue these kinds of activities and hobbies was actually affordable because, you know, the leftist organizations were providing it. So like normal people could actually afford to like join the have their children be in the Pioneers and like have them do sports and stuff, and it prevented crime, it prevented alienation, and just like...
Finball, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? In the Soviet Union, there were no scouts. You just, as a child, you just went to the gulag. That's all you did. There's no such thing as pioneers. This bullshit you're fucking talking about.
So they had the pioneers after...
Well, I'm not only talking about socialist countries, I'm talking about this country. Like, just in general, in countries where the communist parties and the left was stronger, they could still provide, like, these other types of things too, like, but these days, like, these days, like, the youth are just, like, I don't know, pushed into basically forced delinquency because they have nothing to do. They can't, like, all the activities they want to do cost too much money, like,
yeah,
you know.
No, dude, the scouts are ruined by girls, bro. It was a boys only club.
Pioneers, that's like a form of like dual power, having like a separate communist fucking pioneers and the
Well,
scouts.
it's because the society was so divided after the Civil War that you couldn't even have people be in the same like cross-country skiing team or something, because it's like, well, your father fucking killed my father, like.
The drunken wars.
It doesn't build. The Boy Scouts have helped shape tens of millions of boys into independent, strong, good
into,
men.
like,
So
rape
where's the left-wing
objects.
version of the Boy Scouts? It doesn't exist.
Oh my god,
There
we
is
literally just went.
Nine.
We literally just went over that. We just
Like, do
completely
you just
disproved that
PragerU?
statement.
Does PragerU want pioneer organizations in the U.S.? Like, is that what you're like? Oh well.
Well, the scouts now have girls too, so what the fuck?
Also, like, have you ever heard of all these pedophile scandals in the Boy Scouts?
Yeah, it's like,
fucking
yeah.
wild.
It's
I mean,
almost worse than the Catholic Church, dude.
fucking
Yeah.
what PragerU is saying. Like, did you ever read Calvin and Hobbes?
No.
That was like my favorite like comic when I was a
I
child.
thought you were referring
And
to
it's
the
like-
philosophers.
Well, yeah, I mean that's the fucking joke, but I mean so in Calvin and Hobbes, like they have a tree house, and like they have this big sign on it that says like I'm not like I only know it in Finnish. I'm not as familiar in English, but it says something like it's like an acronym, like it's gross, and it means like get girls out of here or something, and it's like that's literally what PragerU is arguing. It's like girls are icky. We don't want girls. Like
Yeah, the Boy Scouts is for men.
that's integral to the fabric of society somehow.
Yeah,
Like,
if you're in the Boy Scouts and you're a girl, that means that you're a fucking cross-dresser.
this is
You
like
need
a
to be
this is like a
fucking
new
thrown
level
away.
of this is a new level of identity politics. It's like I don't even know what this is. This is like
It was a boys-only club, and the girls to come in and fuck everything up.
yeah, this is like I don't even know what this
Elementary school
is.
politics is what it is.
Yeah.
Male, female. In some ways,
no.
scariest of all, the left is committed to ending male and female as distinct categories. Children are increasingly raised not to think of themselves as a boy or a girl. Teachers are told not to refer to their students as boys or girls, just
What?
students.
What?
In New York City,
What?
They
Where?
literally call them fucking Mister and shit in the U.S.
Where? Like where is this happening? Where do fucking teachers not refer to their students as boys and girls? Like
What the point is that this is made for boomers who've been in the school like been in school 60 years ago. Like they're so out of touch in reality. So they're
this
so
is
out of
not
touch
even
with reality.
happening.
They think.
Boomers.
Also,
I mean,
this
yeah,
whole,
like they don't fucking know.
This
They
whole
think
fucking
that this is
idea-
happening.
This whole idea of the left doesn't want any distinction between male and female, like that's not even remotely true. It's not about sex. It's about the fucking gender, the standard, the arbitrary standards that we have for gender identity. Like it's not about sex.
Holy gosh, if you're trans, then you will have a really easy time in society. But if you're not trans, then everybody's just gonna fucking bully you.
It's like PragerU believes that like leftists push for like genetically engineering humans into hermaphrodites. Like what?
No, they do.
I wouldn't mind, honestly. I'd like to have some tits.
parents do not have to check off male or female on their newborn's birth certificate.
You know what?
They can
Like,
check off X.
wait. I don't know about the U.S., but here at least, like that has always existed because, like, believe it or not, some people are born that way too. Like, some people are born with like confused, you know. I don't know, like. Basically, like some people are actually born hermaphrodites. You know, like.
Yeah.
You need to have a box
it is
like
very
that.
Rare. It is.
I mean,
very
it
rare.
is,
but yeah, of course, the option should exist regardless.
Yeah, it has to exist. Like, otherwise, I mean, what else are you gonna do?
It's just they don't exist.
I mean, how
Just
many?
ignore 'em.
Is this really like a wide mass phenomena of like babies being born and then the parents are just like, well, my baby doesn't have a gender. Like, no,
It's not. It's not.
that never happens.
That never happens. Like nobody, like people, like regardless of like biology, like people have people have like sort of an understanding of sex, and like they're like, oh, I want 2 boys and 1 girl, like like nobody's out here saying, oh, actually, I don't want any boys or girls. I want all of my children
I
to
mean,
be
there are
hermaphrodites.
people out there saying that, but I mean, they're definitely isolated.
The thing is that it's just taken completely out of context because it's not about their fucking sexual identity. It's about the arbitrary standards that we associate to those genders.
Like, think about it, like, because like, obviously we're coming at this from a total polar opposite point of view from PragerU, but, like, whenever we talk about, like, okay, what should we do, like, regarding trans people, like, we always bring up how, like, there's so few of them. Like, whenever, like, when you go out there on the street, like, when do you ever even see trans people? Like, there's not many of them, and, like, we're always...
acting as if, like, trans people now make up, like, 25% of the population.
They make, like, 99% of the population. Like, we're
rampant
like,
problem.
Yeah, like, we're always talking about, like, okay, what should we do about this, like, regarding, like strategy and whatnot, like, because there's not a lot of them. Like, I think, like, the trans issue is more significant than just, like, the number of them, because, like, well,
yeah,
people,
it's part of a wider issue of
I mean,
like,
I just mean that I mean that it involves people who are not trans themselves, but they are invested in the issue, you know, like.
Yeah.
But still, like, it's not like 95% of population is trans because the state is, like, mandating it or something. Like, this like crazy fucking clown world that PragerU is, like, depicting.
Yeah, I mean, you know, leave it to PragerU to rely on feelings and not reason.
Yeah.
Like, they're always like, oh, the left only cares about feelings, not reason. It's like, oh, so what's your reason for, like, being against fucking non-sex or, like, non-male female people? Like, what's the reasoning? Well, I mean, it's not appropriate.
It's gross, man.
It's gross. It's like, oh, so that's a feeling then. That's not a fucking reason.
They appeal to aesthetic, they appeal to religion, they appeal to nature, like, oh, it's just not natural for a man to be with a man, and it's just not natural for,
arbitrary
like...
arbitrary feeling idealism, like, literally feelings. And it's ridiculous, too, because this whole idea that, oh, well, women and men were, like, meant to they clearly, it's like, by, like, naturally the standard is that men are only attracted to women and women are only attracted to men. Then explain literally, like, all of the ancient Greek art of dudes doing each other. Like,
yeah, but they literally think that those societies collapsed when they started doing the gay.
But the thing is, like, even Alexander the Great was gay.
That's what...
Or bisexual, at least.
They literally think those societies came to an end because they started being gay, and that's why they're saying that if we do that, it's going to happen to us too, man.
There are literally, like, plenty of stories of not only Alexander the Great, but his father, Philip II, having homosexual relations. Like, this was
the Egyptians
not, like...
had, like... The Egyptians had, like, literal incestuous fucking, like, monarchies, like, completely.
Yeah.
All this imposed gender confusion can only end up producing confused people and a confused society. So why does the left engage in so much destruction? Because it thinks America is essentially a bad country. But America is only bad compared to utopia.
Okay, stop. So, like, the ironic thing is that, okay, there's actually, like, there are plenty of conservatives out there who are afraid of, like, the feminization of the American man, and, like, they're afraid of I don't know, the races mixing, and they're afraid of, like, kids being forced to be trans and whatnot. But they still agree with us about the fundamental thing, which is the reason why everybody thinks America is a bad country. It's people don't think America is a bad country because, like, some arbitrary, like, America is just, like, evil. No, it's the fact that you bomb everybody. Even these conservatives, like, it's just neocons who want and fucking Democrats too. It's just the establishment Democrats and neocons who support this capitalist imperialism, and even the working class conservatives who really are like, they're pro-life, they don't like gays, whatnot, but they are not like these bloodthirsty war hawks.
Yeah,
And
it's true.
that's why they have to try to divide people like with these like social issues and identity politics, is because like normal people agree that like, yeah, the billionaires shouldn't billionaire and the fucking imperialists shouldn't bomb everybody.
Yeah,
which
I mean,
is just like,
there is definitely like a legitimate distinction between working class conservatives and conservative politicians, right? Because working class conservatives, most of them at least, will like willingly admit that like the military industrial complex is like corrupting the government and like leading them to like these totally fucking like imperialist like unnecessary wars, and how like the government is just like totally sold out. Like working class conservatives, most of them are even willing to admit like these things, right? And meanwhile, like conservative politicians are like, or like, well, not, I mean, it's not just politicians, it's just like bourgeois conservatives in general have a completely different opinion on those matters. So even like within conservative ideology, there is class distinctions. Like there are class distinctions in conservative and liberal ideology, of course. And so like, like that just shows like how disconnected like, or rather it showcases the class antagonisms even in people who are apparently under the same ideological like fundamentals, right?
and I mean that's like, and this is related to Bernie too, and Ocasio-Cortez, because like, okay, Bernie and Ocasio-Cortez, they do get shit for being I mean, of course, like there's always the conservatives and the liberals are arguing about social issues, but Bernie and Ocasio-Cortez do get criticized by the establishment because they want social democracy as opposed to neoliberal capitalism. But Bernie and Ocasio-Cortez are still acceptable politicians because they still support the U.S. war machine, and that's like the biggest thing that the actual left hates about Bernie, is that like we could almost sort of like kinda support some aspects of Bernie if he wasn't a fucking imperialist, because like Bernie is an absolute social chauvinist. Like he thinks that Americans should have a little bit of an easier time at the expense of other countries. Like,
well, I mean, I don't think he openly is like that.
Well,
but sure,
no,
like,
but he,
like, yeah, definitely, like, in his own like personal ideals, like he is some level of social chauvinist.
I mean,
Yeah, but
he
the old-
openly admits what the U.S. did to Latin America, though, and Telesur itself, like the
Sure,
Venezuelan state
sure,
news
but-
agency. Yeah, but Telesur likes Bernie, though. I mean, like, if Venezuela really thought Bernie was an imperialist, and why would they endorse him?
Yeah,
well,
I mean,
they endorse him because he's like the left wing, the most
Yeah, but they're gonna
left
get
of
bombed
the.
either way, though. That's what
Well,
you're
no, but like Bernie literally Bernie has not ever done anything to support Venezuela. Bernie literally calls Maduro a dictator. Like,
Yeah, but
well, I mean,
doesn't
he
do
used to.
much
I think he
for it.
recently had like a change of heart. Though.
When-
I think
when
recently he like
when
came out to
I mean,
say that
he's
Venezuela is
generally-
actually not
he's
that
voted
bad.
for wars, like admittedly, but I mean he's the most anti-war politician like in mainstream politics, ultimately.
Yeah,
well,
I
that's
mean,
what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. I mean, they don't accept anti-war politicians into mainstream politics, but like,
yeah.
it's
even Bernie, who's like like Zach said, who has previously voted for certain wars, like even him, like they're like, no, he's too far,
Well, like Bernie, he said that he is going to do everything to prevent a war with Iran, and I was thinking, well, okay, well that's good, since like you're saying that you're going to oppose a hypothetical war in the future but you're not gonna do anything to oppose like the actual shit they're doing to Venezuela.
Well, he
And,
has said, like, I mean, I've seen him like say some things about the whole Venezuela thing, but I mean, clearly he's trying to like be low key about it, because as soon as Bernie, like, you have to understand the position he's in, right? Because, like,
I mean, if he were to defend Venezuela, like, actually, then of course the media is gonna call him like, oh, you support communist dictatorship and
yeah,
whatnot.
exactly.
And
Like, it would be a really like big shitstorm for Bernie, you know. And I think his strategy is just like trying to, you know, get like the left's foot into the door when it comes to public appeal, right? And I think, like, you know, of course Bernie is not radical enough, and of course he ultimately is a social democrat, but you know what the things that he's currently contributing to politics are not detrimental or useless. Like, they are at least a decent starting point. Like, you know, of course, you know, we can make comparisons to like Kautsky. Like, of course,
I mean,
Kautsky
yeah, I
was a
suppose it
right
depends on the
deviationist,
situation.
but nonetheless, he did manage to like bring over some more moderate people to like Marxist ideals.
I do think he was at least at one point like a real socialist, because I mean he did like condemn the left. He was actually in like a socialist party, like not like the Democrats.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
he also vacationed
was-
to the USSR, so like let's not forget that.
Yeah, but like over time, and then like when he became like semi acceptable, he had to like drop all of that. And like,
Yeah.
I mean, if you read like I recently did an audiobook of the maybe you can link in the description or something on Lenin's Tasks of the Proletariat in Our Revolution. It's on my second channel, Marxist-Leninist Theory, and in that, like, Lenin devotes a lot of time to the question of the First World War, and he separates like these three trends in the discussion, like in the socialist movement. He says that there's the right-wing trend, who are the open social chauvinists who support the war. Then there's the left-wing trend, who are internationalists who actually concretely do things to oppose the war and try to advocate for revolution against the government instead of going to war. And then there's the centrist trend, who are like covert social chauvinist, or he calls them social pacifist. So they basically say that they want peace, but they don't actually do anything. And
what can he do though? I mean, he's just a senator for Vermont.
Well, I mean, I don't know, but like basically the point is that, of course, like the point is that if he doesn't actually want to take a stand against the, like, basically to be in favor of peace, he would have to challenge the establishment, really. And of course he doesn't want to do that. And like, I don't know how he would, but like that's what's happening. He doesn't want to challenge the system because that would, you know, cause him a lot of problems. Like, then he wouldn't be, he wants to have influence within the system, and of course he's not going to be able to do that, like, because he's not trying to overthrow the system from the outside. He's trying to get into it.
He has influence on the public discourse though, and that's why in some ways like the progressives are actually helping us, like people like Jimmy Dore and shit like that. They are actually,
well, Jimmy Dore is coming even closer and closer to fucking Marxism. It's kind of hilarious.
Well, like this, I mean, this relates to what Polinkosh said earlier about Kautsky. It's because Kautsky obviously used to be like the mainstream face of socialism until the war happened and there was the big split and everything.
Yeah.
Like what Lenin says in the book is that from like the 1870s to the First World War, Kautskyism was like okay, but then this thing happened which, you know, forced them to adapt to a new situation and a new line, and at that point Kautskyism fucking became super exposed itself as being super opportunist.
Yeah.
And I think Bernie is like similar. Yeah, like Bernie is maybe similar in that, like, in this situation he maybe has a positive influence, but like if there was
in the long run he's going to be less relevant.
If there was if it was a competition between actual leftists and Bernie, then obviously Bernie would be like horrible.
Right.
But since people just settle for him because he's like the only thing there is.
Yeah,
but I mean,
communists
of
here
course,
don't have any power though. Communists here don't have any power whatsoever.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, but once again, it's not ultimately it's not about people. It's about conditions, right? It's about the material conditions. And as crises get worse, as these inevitable economic depressions, lead to a consistently decreasing living standard, people are eventually going to realize that Bernie is not enough. So before I finish the video, I do want to say that this will most likely be the last video that I'm going to be uploading for the next
ever
for the next at least a month and a half, because I'm going to be vacationing to Poland for 6 weeks. So on top of that, a lot of you might already know this, but I'm currently making a series about Marxist undertones in the show The Office, and so I might be able to get the first episode out this weekend, but if not, then it'll have to be out like in 2 months essentially. So yeah, I just wanted to let everybody know that I'm going to be gone for a little while. But yeah, thanks comrades for watching, and we'll see you in the next Big Brain.
Later.